Hello, my name is Sam. This is the fourth episode in a series of episodes about quadratics. In this episode, we're going to have a look at the quadratic formula and how we can use it, what it's used for, and we're going to run through some example questions. So let's get straight into it. What is the quadratic formula? Well, I've written it there on the screen. So I've got x equals, and then I've got a short equation. Now, B, A, and C we will talk about in a minute. But essentially what the quadratic formula does is it is another method for solving quadratics. So previously we've used factorising, where you can factorise a quadratic into double brackets, and then you can find when the values equal 0 or equal another number, and you can solve to get your solutions then. In the last episode we had a look at completing the square. It's another great method. You can also collect turning points with that, and now we're going to look at quadratic formula. So what do I mean by solutions? Well, this formula tells you where x is equal, where the function is equal to 0. So what will your x coordinates be at that point? So essentially it is these points on the graph. So this is just an example. The solution here would be -5 and 1, and those solutions could be gained by the quadratic formula. Unfortunately, in the exam, this is not a great method to use in all cases because it can be quite slow, and you also have to use specific methods in some questions. So you shouldn't always use the quadratic formula. This should be a last resort, but you should know when to use it, as some questions that want you to leave your answer in decimal places or in surd form will require you to use the quadratic formula. So let's get into some questions. This is the first one. X squared plus 2x minus 7 equals 0. At first it looks like a pretty standard quadratic, but when you look at it closer, there's in fact a big problem with it. And the main issue is that you can't factorise it. And that is one of the biggest clues that we're going to have to use the quadratic formula, is that you cannot factorise this quadratic. As you can see, you can't think of two normal numbers, they being integers, which will add to make 2 and which will multiply to make -7. So we're going to have to use our quadratic formula. Equally, you could solve this by completing the square, but today we're having a look at the quadratic formula. So what is the formula? Well, x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now there is a song that goes along to this. It goes x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If that's how you want to remember it, go ahead. That's not how I remembered it. I just remembered it through usage, I think, and through sheer revision. It kind of gets stuck in your head, and when you use it too many times, you don't really forget it. So what are a, b, and c in this equation? Well, they are in the exact order that they appear in this equation. So in this case, we have a 1 here. You just can't see it, we don't write it, but there is a 1 there, and this is a. The 2 would be the b, and the -7 would be the c. C is not 7, c is -7. So if you have a negative in front of any of these numbers, it must be included in the a, b, or c. So let's substitute these values into the equation. So we have minus b, which is going to come out as -2, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so this is going to be 2 squared, minus 4 times by a, which is 1, times by c, which is -7. And this is going to be all over 2 times by a, our a being 1, so this is 2 times by 1. We can then simplify this. So we have -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared is 4, and then we're going to subtract 4 multiplied by 7 is going to be 28, and we have a minus and a minus, so this is going to be plus 28, and this is all over 2. So we can simplify again. So we have -2 plus or minus the square root of 28 plus 4 is 32, and again this is going to be all over 2, and now you have to think about simplifying this. If you've studied surds, or you've had a look at other videos to do with simplifying surds, then this is a great opportunity to use that, and it is a very necessary topic for solving these quadratics and leaving them in surd form. So we're going to pull a root 16 out of this, so it's going to be root 16 times by root 2, which is going to be 4 root 2. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to say x equals -2 plus or minus, not 2, it's 4. I literally said it. 4 root 2 all over 2. The reason we have a 4 here is if we square the 4 and put it in a square root, it becomes the square root of 16 times by the square root of 2, which is the square root of 32. We can then apply this half to both parts of this equation. We have minus 2 over 2 is minus 1, plus or minus 4 over 2 is plus or minus 2 root 2. The reason for this plus and this minus is that if you remember back in this graph, we have two solutions. These won't always be just one being positive and just one being negative. Most of the time they'll be on one side of the y-axis, sometimes they'll be on the same side, but essentially this is creating our two different solutions. You would have one solution of x at minus 1 plus 2 root 2, and you would have another solution of x at minus 1 minus 2 root 2. Now if the question asks you to leave it in third form, this is what you must leave it as. If it asks you to simplify it further into a decimal, you can put exactly this into your calculator, and then when it gives you your answer, if you press the SD button, it will output your answer as a decimal, and that will be the correct answer. Okay, so let's move on to another example. X squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Again, we just have a 1 here, so that's fine. Let's write down our quadratic formula. Sometimes it can help that as you're writing down the formula to sing the song, helps you remember it, and it also just makes sure that you get it right when you write it down. So our A value is going to be 1, our B value is going to be minus 4, and our C value is going to be minus 1. Again, we can see that there is not going to be a number which actually allows this to work, since if you try and think of two integers which add to get minus 4 and multiply to get minus 1, it's not very easy. So we're going to have to use the quadratic formula. So x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Let's substitute in our values. So we have minus b, so that's minus b, which is minus 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is minus 4 squared. These brackets are really important. It's a really common downfall for GCSE students, is that they miss out the brackets and they will do minus 4 squared, which comes out as minus 16. It is not correct, as minus 4 times by itself is positive 16. We can then subtract 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is minus 1. So then what we're going to do is we're going to do the minus, which just gives us a normal 4. Oh, sorry, this is all over 2a, which is 2 times by 1. So now we can do the minus times by the minus, which is positive, so we're just going to have 4 plus or minus the square root of minus 4 squared, which is going to be 16, and then we have minus 4 times 1 times minus 1. Now 4 times 1 is 4, times by minus 1 is minus 4, and we are doing minus 4, so plus 4. And this is all over 2. I'm going to just move up here quickly, and we can simplify this further. So this 16 and this 4 can add to become the square root of 20. So we have 4 plus or minus the square root of 20 over 2. And then we can use our third rules to simplify this root 20 further. So we think about the largest square number, which goes into the square root of 20, and it's going to be 4, because 4 times 5 is 20, and root 4 is 2. So we can have 4 plus or minus 2 root 5 all over 2. Again, this is some of the third stuff. I have some students which struggle with this kind of thing, and if you do, go have a look at a video on it somewhere on YouTube. There's plenty of great ones out there, and these will really help you with your quadratics. We can then apply this half to both of this 4 and this 2, so we're going to have the 4 over 2, which is 2 plus or minus 1 root 5, which can be simplified to x equals, that's not a 1, that's a 5, 2 plus root 5, x equals 2 minus root 5. Again, it would probably be acceptable to leave your answer with the plus or the minus in there, but just to be sure, write out both answers separately, just to really make it clear to the examiner you know what you're on about, you know what it means, and these are your two answers. Perfect. Let's move on to a final example. So this one looks a little bit different. We have a 2 as our coefficient of x squared. Again, when I say coefficient, I just mean this is the number that comes before the x squared. It is how many x squareds we have. And let's just make sure that this is one that we need to do by the quadratic formula. So we would be thinking 2 times by minus 25 is going to be minus 50. We need two numbers which add to get 9 and multiply to get minus 50. And it's like, well, you probably could do that, but I'm not going to. Also, a question like this would probably explicitly specify that you need to leave your answer as a decimal point or in third form. And that is one of the best giveaways that you need to use the quadratic formula. So that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to write our A, our B, and our C. A equals 2, B equals 9, and C equals minus 25. Do not forget that minus. It is very, very important. So after you've made sure that you in fact do need to use a quadratic formula, we can get started. So let's write it down first. Remember to always, always, always write down any formulas that you use in your exam, as writing down just the formula can get you a mark. I'm not entirely sure about the quadratic formula in that case, but say if you're using trigonometry, you're doing the cosine rule, you're using Pythagoras rule, you're using the sine rule, those kind of things. Always, always, always write those down, as you can pick up marks for just writing down the equation and substituting in the values sometimes. So x equals minus b, which is 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 9 squared, minus 4a being 2, and c being minus 25, all over 2 times by a, which is 2. So we can keep writing this as minus 9 plus or minus the square root of 9 squared is 81. And then we've got 4 times 2, which is 8 times by minus 25. So that does complicate things. Instead, we can do 2 times 25 is 50, 4 times 50 is 200. That makes it much easier. The minus and the minus cancel out, so we're going to have 81 plus 200 in our square root here. We can then do all of this over 4. We can then keep moving up here, and we can go to minus 9 plus or minus the square root of 81 plus 200 is 281 all over 4. And since 281 cannot be simplified any further as a third, that will be your final simplification, and this could be your final answer. You could do a neater way of writing it. You could have minus 9 over 4 plus or minus a quarter root 281. That's simply where I've put this 4 on the minus 9, and I've put it in front of the third as well, but you do not have to do that. You can then write out your separate answers. Minus 9 over 4 plus a quarter root 281, and x equals minus 9 over 4 minus a quarter root 281. Perfect, so that is an introduction to the use of the quadratic formula. It's a very, very important thing to know for your GCSE, and it is immensely helpful, but it should not be your go-to method. You should always try and do everything else that you can first before you go straight into the quadratic formula. Thank you for watching.